night was already deep. Kashatij suddenly realized that he was standing at an unknown place. Thick smoke was spread all around him, so dense that it was not visible clearly even at a distance. Amidst that mist, a huge old banyan tree was standing in front. Cold air was coming out from between its thick roots, as if the tree was breathing. Many people were sitting under the tree. Someone was silently staring in one direction. Some woman was crying uncontrollably, holding her head. A little girl was making something out of clay, and a man was wandering around aimlessly. The thing was emptiness in everyone's eyes, as if the meaning of life has gone out of them. Amidst all this, a girl was sitting on the ground. She was counting the small pots scattered in front. 2, 4, ch8, 10, 12, 14. As soon as she reached 14, she would scream loudly. Tears would start flowing from her eyes and she would cry loudly. Then after some time, she would start counting the same kavadis again. Seeing this scene, Kashatij's heart started beating fast. A cold shiver ran through his entire body. Looking around timidly, he asked, "So who are you guys? What kind of place is this? How did I get here?" His voice was lost in the smoke. There were the same people all around, but no one even looked at him, as if he was not present there. Suddenly, the air became heavy and a resonating deep unknown sound spread in the same stagnant air. "Welcome to the world of unsatisfied souls." It seemed as if the ground slipped beneath Kashatij's feet. He trembled. A world of unsatisfied souls. But how did I come here? There was silence for some moments. Then the same voice echoed again, softly, "But remember what happened to you a short time ago." Kashatij's forehead became drenched with sweat. He closed his eyes tightly and remembered. Tried to find out what had happened to him some time ago. Then suddenly, blurry visions started appearing in his mind, as if scattered memories are slowly coming together. Each moment, each incident, everything started coming back before his eyes. Today, Kashatij was very happy. The unspoken relationship between their eyes that had been going on for years was about to be expressed in words today. Because today, he was going to propose his girlfriend. She was waiting for him in the restaurant. As soon as Kashatij reached in front of the restaurant, his eyes fell on her. She was sitting near Kilki. As soon as he saw her, that familiar, sweet smile blossomed on his lips. Kashatij's heart started beating loudly. He took a deep breath and was about to take a step towards her when suddenly there was a thud. Suddenly a speeding truck hit him hard, and the next moment everything was plunged into darkness. Kashatij said in a trembling voice, "That means I am dead and have come here." His eyes filled with tears. Lips started trembling. He sat there on his knees and cried. This is what was written in my part. Incomplete love, incomplete life. I hadn't even started yet. I wanted to tell her how much I love her. I love, and before that, it was all over. His voice was breaking. He just kept crying for some time. But gradually, Kashatij started breathing better. She wiped her tears. Raised their face. There was no longer just pain in his eyes. There was also a slight glimmer of understanding. He spoke in a low voice. If I remain like this in my incompleteness, if I continue to cling to it, I will probably always remain stuck between life and death. Like all of you, he looked around slowly. He listened to each face. And in the heart of Bihar, a story unfolded that would grip the nation. A story of love, loss, and a fight for justice that spanned over a decade. This is the story of Savitri, Gudia, and Donange. It all began in the early 2000s, in a small village where life was simple, but dreams were big. Savitri, a young woman with eyes full of hope, fell in love with Donange, a man from a neighboring village. Their love was pure, a connection that felt destined. But destiny, as they would soon learn, had a cruel twist in store. Their families, initially hesitant, eventually blessed their union. The wedding was a celebration of hope, a promise of a future filled with happiness. They moved to a small town, eager to build a life together. Donange worked hard, and Savitri turned their small house into a warm and loving home. Their joy knew no bounds when they welcomed their daughter Gudia. She was their world, a tiny beacon of light, her laughter filling every corner of their lives. For a few years, it seemed like they had found their fairy tale. They were a perfect little family, a testament to the power of love. But one fateful evening, everything changed. Donange, returning late from work, never made it home. Panic set in as the hours turned into days. Savitri, with a baby in her arms, searched everywhere, her heart pounding with a fear she had never known. The police were called, investigations were launched, but Donange had vanished without a trace. The days turned into weeks, the weeks into months, and the months into years. The vibrant, hopeful Savitri began to fade, replaced by a woman haunted by a single, agonizing question. Where was her husband? She raised Gudia alone, pouring all her love and strength into her daughter. Gudia grew up with a phantom father, a man she knew only through her mother's stories and a faded photograph. Savitri told her he was a hero, a kind and loving man who would one day return. It was a story she told to protect her daughter, and perhaps to keep a flicker of hope alive in her own heart. Life was a constant struggle. Savitri took on odd jobs, fighting poverty and prejudice every single day. She was a single mother in a society that often looked down on women like her. But for Gudia's sake, she endured. She was determined to give her daughter the life Donange would have wanted for her. Gudia grew into a bright, inquisitive young girl. She excelled in school, her mother's strength reflected in her own determined spirit. But as she got older, the questions about her father became more persistent. She started to notice the inconsistencies in the stories, the sadness that clouded her mother's eyes whenever she spoke of him. The village, whispers, the pitying glances all painted a picture that was far from the fairy tale her mother had created. Gudia started to feel the weight of the unknown, the gaping hole in her family's story. She wanted answers, not just for herself, but for her mother, who had sacrificed everything. One day, while cleaning out an old trunk, Gudia stumbled upon a box of her father's belongings. Inside, she found old letters, diaries, and newspaper clippings from the time of his disappearance. As she pieced together the fragments of the past, a darker, more complex story began to emerge. It wasn't just a simple case of a man gone missing. The clippings spoke of local land disputes, of threats, and of a powerful family in the region. Donange, it seemed, had been caught in the middle of something dangerous. He had stood up against injustice, trying to protect the land of poor farmers from being illegally seized. This discovery ignited a fire in Gudia. The hero her mother described was real, but his story was not one of a simple disappearance. It was a story of courage and sacrifice. With a newfound resolve, Gudia, now a young woman, convinced her mother that they couldn't live in the shadows of the past any longer. They needed to find the truth, not just for closure, but for justice. Together, mother and daughter embarked on a quest that would reopen old wounds and put them in grave danger. Their journey for truth was not easy. They were met with a wall of silence. People were afraid to talk. The powerful family mentioned in the news clippings still held sway over the region. Doors were slammed in their faces, and they received veiled threats. The local police, many of whom were new to the area, dismissed their pleas as a desperate attempt to reopen a cold case. It seemed like every path was a dead end. Savitri's hope began to waver, the fear she had lived with for so long threatening to consume her once more. But Gudia was relentless. Fueled by her father's legacy and her mother's pain, she refused to back down. Gudia, being from a new generation, decided to use a tool that didn't exist when her father disappeared. Social media. She started a blog, sharing her family's story, Donange's fight, and their quest for justice. She posted the old letters, the newspaper articles, and wrote passionately about the silence and fear that gripped her community. The story, initially ignored, slowly began to gain traction. A local journalist, young and ambitious, stumbled upon the blog. Intrigued, he saw the makings of a powerful human interest story and a potential expose of deep-rooted corruption. The journalist, named Ravi, met with Savitri and Gudia. He listened to their story, his professional skepticism giving way to a genuine desire to help. He began his own investigation, using his resources to dig deeper than Savitri and Gudia ever could. He found retired police officers who remembered the case, old land records that had been conveniently lost, and people who were finally willing to speak, their conscience pricked by Gudia's public campaign. The story exploded. National news channels picked it up. #Justice for Donange started trending online. The pressure on the local authorities became immense. The powerful family, who had operated with impunity for years, suddenly found themselves under a national spotlight. Their web of deceit and intimidation began to unravel. Under pressure from the media and the public, a special investigation team was formed. The case was officially reopened. New evidence, brought to light by Ravis's investigation, and the testimony of newly emboldened witnesses, pointed towards a cold-blooded murder, orchestrated to silence a man who knew too much. The truth was more brutal than Savitri had ever allowed herself to imagine. Benange hadn't just disappeared. He had been taken from them, his life cut short because he dared to do the right thing. The legal battle that followed was grueling. Savitri and Gudea had to relive their trauma in a packed courtroom. They faced the men responsible for their years of pain, but this time they were not alone. They had the support of the entire nation. The evidence was overwhelming. In the end, justice, though delayed, was not denied. The perpetrators were found guilty and sentenced for their crimes. The verdict brought a quiet, somber sense of closure. There was no joy, no celebration, only the heavy release of a burden carried for too long. In the aftermath, Savitri and Gudea began to heal. The truth, however painful, had set them free. Savitri, who had lived in a state of suspended grief for so long, could finally mourn her husband properly. Gudea, who had grown up in the shadow of a mystery, could now fully embrace her father's legacy of courage. Their story became a symbol of hope and perseverance. It showed that the voice of one determined young woman, amplified by the power of community and media, could shake the foundations of corruption and bring justice to light. They didn't get Donanjay back, but they reclaimed his honor and ensured his sacrifice was not in vain. Their fight was over, but their story continues to inspire countless others to never give up on the truth. Thank you for watching. If you were moved by this story, please like, share, and subscribe for more content that matters.